how are you feeling? He said, I really don't know how I feel. And I said, how do you feel about feelings? He said, feelings aren't something I usually navigate around.
Mm.
And I said, why? And he said, because I'm scared that if I start feeling, I'll lose control.
Hello and welcome to Shared.care's What is Manly radio show and podcast. Men feel more lonely, lost, and not useful in society than ever in history. Males are not attaching to school, work, or women. What it means to be a man appears lost. Is there a framework for being manly that we can unearth?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
G'day, Peter. How are you today? And g'day. I've got to do it properly because I'm speaking to a fellow Australian. G'day. How are you?
G'day. And the very bizarre thing, what is Manly? I'm talking to you from Manly in Sydney. So what is Manly? Where is Manly? There's a lot of
Exactly.
universes coinciding here.
It was interesting when I first floated this, and there I do have a couple of friends in Sydney, and that was what they brought up. They said, "Well, you're doing a podcast on Manly, the suburb." And I go, "No, this is a little bit different." But it is ironic that you are in Manly.
It'll be a very short podcast because the legend goes that Manly people don't get out of Manly. We all just marry each other, and we're a very inbred community. We don't read anything outside Manly. We just read the Manly Daily newspaper. So it'll be a very short podcast, very monodimensional.
Some would say you're a smaller version of America. Is that about right? It's like we don't know the outside world exists.
Version of America.
Well, they
probably
with less
a
guns.
Smaller version of a smaller version of Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's with less guns, probably less guns, less political, but otherwise pretty much the same.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
For the
There
audience,
used to be a Beach Boys song saying, "Wish they could all." I wish they could all be California girls. The Beach Boys song, something like that. I remember that.
The Beach Boys song, yes, definitely is a great song.
Something like that.
Yeah, for the audience, who we have is Peter Anthony. Now, Peter, amongst many other hats that he wears, he has Peter Anthony Consulting, which he works and accelerates businesses. And he has two key principles. One is develop the relationship with yourself and develop the relationship with your customers. And we'll put Peter's details in the show notes. But Peter, we're having a bit of a discussion in the pre-show. We're talking about this topic of what is manly and men feeling more lost, lonely, and not feeling useful in society. Let's start with what you've seen. What have you experienced? What have you noticed?
What I've noticed, because I do a stack of coaching, and obviously I've got a stack of friends too, and what I've noticed is a disconnection between men and themselves. And one of the ways that I like to think about life is the quality of your life is the quality of your conversations. And I think as males, if I think what is manly, I think someone who is manly is someone who knows how to have a high quality conversation with themselves, and also knows how to have high quality conversations with other people. And I think the quality of your manhood, if you like, or the quality of your life as a male is directly related to the quality of those two types of conversations. And that's something I see again and again and again in coaching males, and in understanding how they operate in a personal and business environment. That makes sense.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
completely makes sense, and we've had that. When I was the CEO of the Family Peace Foundation nearly 10 years ago now, we did a filming session where we were interviewing people. We had people around a dinner table, and we had Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg, which you've probably heard about. The internationals probably won't, and Sabina Reid, a prominent psychologist, asking these people questions about everyday life. And we brought people in that we knew were from strong families, so we wanted to get that perspective, film it, share that with the world. This is, ways of dealing with these issues. But what I noticed coming from a corporate background, because I was directing it, was the men started doing a lot of the talking, and I was getting worried because corporate background, you get all this thing about men dominating the conversations and things like that. So I went to the women who were off camera and I said, "Look, I'm getting worried. The men are doing all the talking." And they said, "No, we never hear men talking about this stuff. We're loving listening." And I've heard
Wow.
that from a number of people, even back in the a guy that I've talked to in America. He did this similar sort of thing back in the 80s, where he had men sit up on a stage, express their views on something, and the women then had to relay what they had heard. And he said the same thing. The women said, "Wow, we've never heard men talking about that." Is it a case where men actually do have all this stuff to say, but we need the right environment to be able to speak?
I think the right environment, and I believe over the past decade, or particularly the past 5 or 6 years, um, men have got more scared
Mm,
to speak up. Because a combination of like the rise of the woke culture, and a misunderstanding of the rise of women in the workplace and in the life place, if you like. We
yeah.
seem to think that if women are rising, it means we need to diminish. It's almost
Mm,
as if the more fully expressed females are, it means it leaves less space for males. But in fact, I think it should encourage us as males to be full manifestations of ourselves as well. And the
mm,
women that I know, and we talked about this briefly earlier, my wife, my three daughters, and other women that I know, um, they would all like to see men being full expressions of themselves, not less than full expressions of themselves. I think that's when we both flourish. If you think about a relationship, like
mm,
a male female relationship, when it works best is when you're both full manifestations of yourselves and you come together. Or if that's in a corporate environment, if you think about a team of people, when each person's making their unique contribution to the team, that team can make a smarter decision than its smartest member can. So you think about a culture and you think, well, when this culture is self-actualizing and it's constructive and it's people are growing together and being full manifestations of themselves, they can get better at what they do. So it's not a matter of stepping back or being scared. I don't. When I think about what is manly, I don't have scared in my definition. What is
mm,
manly? It's someone who's scared to be themselves. Really?
yeah.
Does that fit in the definition? Do you know what I mean? Does that really
Oh,
fit in? No, it doesn't fit in. It doesn't fit in. It's like the old all the fairy tales, like everything from from Goldilocks right through to Shrek. There's always a big dragon outside the cave, guarding the biggest treasure. And if
yeah.
if you're scared of the dragon, you never get the treasure, right? That's how I see it. Yeah,
I love that analogy you're talking about, because what you're talking about, being courageous, and holding true to who you are. I mean,
yeah,
from that perspective of the communication side of things, is it okay? Because I do wonder about that, because I know that men, from what I've seen, certainly, if a look can shut down a guy, where
yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
speak. And that's where I wonder from that perspective, is it a case where, well, it's really, we need to bring it back to the men and say, hey, you have the power. It is your choice to speak or not. If that person, I mean, you mentioned respect in there, doing
Yeah,
things
yeah,
respectfully. I noticed that in my work.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and it's respect for self first.
Yeah.
It's respect for self first, and I love what I mean. There's two great thinkers that sort of combine. They come into this conversation. One is Brene Brown, and
Mm,
she talks a lot about courage and shame. And when she talks about courage, she talks about the ancient Latin root of courage, which is cur, C-U-R. which is about having the courage to tell your story, like have the courage to be you, which means you're going to work out who you are. You had that conversation. You had that conversation with yourself. You say, "This is who I am, and this is who I'm bringing into the world." And the more I manifest that, the more courageous I am, the more genuine and authentic I am in turning up who I am, the better the world is going to work around me, and the better relationships I'm going to have with everybody around me, like with my partner, with my kids, with my friends, in business relationships, because I'm going to build trust and relationship in that way. And I think that's what women are looking for too. They're not looking for someone who's shrinking and cowering and too scared to speak up. I don't know a woman that wants to be around someone like that, really.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, but men as well. I mean, from that perspective, I know from my side of things that if someone's, kind of hiding in it, that's kind of like the Gollum character, isn't it? Where
yeah. Like someone who's scared. You think, well, who or what are you scared of? And you think, okay, and the question I ask a lot of the clients I work with is that if you're too concerned to be yourself, well, who are you? Like, who are you trying to be? And there's this great idea that originally came from Viktor Frankl that reminded me too when you were talking there, which is about in between the stimulus and response, there's a space. In between what's happening to me and how I respond, there's a space. And in that space, he said, that's your freedom. That's your freedom. Freedom, and I'd suggest be a full manifestation of who you are, and have as little difference between how you are in your underlying self, like how you really are, and how you're turning up in the world, and have the courage to do that. Then you get the self-respect, you feel good in your own bones, you walk into the world that way, you build genuine relationships with the people around you, and life improves. It's harder than shrinking, but the benefits are bigger.
Is it harder though?
I think it's hard. I think it's harder. I mean, it's harder in the moment because you've got to have challenging conversations. You've got to tell the truth.
Well, this comes back to you mentioned, and I love that you talk about communication, and don't you hate it when you get to a certain age and you start quoting your parents and actually recognizing the wisdom in what they said?
Oh, right.
Yeah. Exactly. Because my mum used to always talk about the key thing to having a good relationship, and she was talking about a personal, intimate relationship, is comes down to communication, which is exactly what you're talking about. But from that perspective, there's a big component about that when we're talking about fear of going out there and putting yourself out there, because we see this with social media. There's a lot of people, and I think the US presidential election was a great example of this, or the presidential election debate. Because when we're talking about a debate, in my view, that's two narcissists hitting each other over the head with their opinion. No one's listening. Listening's a big, if I correct, I'm jumping ahead here, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, but listening's a big part of communication, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. And it's not just listen. I mean, a lot of, when I see conversations in workshops and I see conversations of people I'm coaching, it's people waiting to make their point.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm listening to you. I'm listening to my partner. I'm listening to my wife. Listening to my girlfriend. I'm waiting for her to stop talking so I can make my point. Right. Which it's almost like tennis. Like I'm waiting for her to hit the ball to me so I can hit it back again.
Yeah.
Now, the best definition of listening I've come across, I've found, is to listen until you disappear. Right? Like, which means I'm completely listening. I've disappeared. Me has disappeared, and I'm here completely for you, and I'm completely immersed in what you're saying.
Yeah,
and I'm just super, particularly if I'm with a woman and it's someone important to me, I'm going to be super curious about how she's feeling and what she's thinking. With
guys, for the single guys listening, pay attention to that last line. You do that, you're more than likely to get laid.
Absolutely. Because when they feel comfortable, that's when everything else starts happening, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what I don't understand. It's like, for a woman, her turn-ons are listening to her and that kind of thing. It's an emotional thing. But with this listening, what you're talking about there is being able to fully listen.
Yeah, and suspend. This is such good advice to guys. Suspend your need to make a recommendation about what she's saying.
Don't be Mr. Fix-It.
Recommend anything. Like if
Shut up
you
and
walk in
listen.
and she says, "Oh, the house is flooded," don't say, "Let's call a plumber."
Yeah. How does that
Just
make
say,
you
"Really,
feel?
it's flooding.
How does that make you
Whereabouts
feel?
is it
Ask a
flooding?
question.
Oh, it's flooding over here. Oh, that's interesting. Just be really curious about the flood, but don't call any plumbers." Right.
But this listening component, because I want to draw an analogy, I was posted to the SAS when I was in the Australian Army and posted to the SAS. And so these guys are, the toughest of the tough. Because we talk about, this, and I always got, and I hate the word norm. They go, it's normal for men to be stoic and not ask for help and things like that. All the guys there I was with, they could all ask for help. They could all express emotions, and we'll get to that point in a minute. What I want to get to here is they were all very, very capable. Like they were killers. They knew how to do that and were very good at that. Outside of, if you didn't know that they're in the army, outside of, take the uniform off, everyday life, you never would have known that's what they were like. One of the guys that was close to, he's probably, and I think he was probably one of the most lethal guys on the planet, was certainly at the base. His hobby was sewing. He took in my pants when I lost weight. And that's what you would see. But he walked with a quiet confidence. He didn't have to do anything. And from a listening perspective, this is the analogy I want to draw. Is that a case where you are confident in yourself that you can be open to listening to someone else's point of view quite comfortably?
Yes, and I like that example. And I've also have known people, primarily ex-military, not current military, that were elite soldiers. Like people that ran battle operations in Iraq and had very intense jobs. You would not know unless they told you. And in fact, they don't like talking about it. The good ones don't like sharing that sort of stuff.
My granddad, he escaped from 2 concentration camps in Germany. He's I'm Polish, Russian, and Ukraine combined, so I get along with myself well. So I could go over there to the peace talk.
Polish, Russian,
and Ukraine.
Wow.
Both grandmothers were Polish 100%. My granddad on my dad's side was half Polish, half Russian, and my granddad on my mum's side was Ukraine.
Wow, okay.
Which is not unusual in that when you look at it, in that space, you could easily do that.
Yeah, and they're very close, like obviously geographically, they share.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And so you go.
Yeah, no. So I was going to say, from that perspective, it's when now I've lost my train of thought. You go.
It's interesting. I mean, if you think about male, female, there are definitely differences. I mean, in the coaching work that I do, we do psychometrics, so you can see what people's traits are.
Yeah.
And there are definitely, if you think of, say, outcome focused, people focused, for example, as one polarity, it's definitely more likely that men are more outcome focused and women are more people focused.
Yeah.
But if you look at it like an average normal distribution, you're still going to get outcome focused women and people focused men. It's just men are more likely to be more outcome focused. There's more of them in the outcome focus end. It doesn't mean they haven't got people focused. It just means that they tend to, their default position is to go for outcome rather than people, whereas the default position for women, not that they don't like outcomes, they absolutely do. It's just that their default position tends to be first to the people focus. Yeah. It's a yin and a yang. It's a bit of both. A lot of guys, a lot of males were raised to think if you get a feeling, push it down, because that means that's not male to feel anything. Well, it's not about not feeling things. It's the opposite, actually. It's about feeling, particularly feeling how you feel, and being super conscious about how other people feel, particularly your romantic partner. Because like we were saying a little earlier, when you're fully invested in how she feels, not changing how she feels, but understanding and caring about how she feels, your life will be open. Your life open up enormously to stop. And life is so much easier then too, because you haven't got to change anything for her.
Yeah.
Right? Have you got to change it? You haven't got to stop the flood.
Here's a tip for the
really
guys out
care
there.
about the fact
It's
that
one of those things. Never surprise a woman, but you plan a date 2 weeks in advance, and then you tell her about it. You've immediately got points, and you haven't done anything yet.
Exactly, and tell her how great it's going to be and how much you care about her. I mean, I had a great example a couple of nights ago. My youngest daughter was convinced. She said she woke up at about 2 a.m. and she could hear a bear in the backyard, right? A bear, a full-grown bear.
Yeah.
Now,
and you're in Manly, which, you
I'm in
don't allow
Manly.
bears there.
There's no bears. There's no bears. No bears in Australia apart from koala bears, last time I checked.
Yeah, they're
But she
pretty
heard
dangerous,
of
though.
Now, I could have easily said to M, there's no bears in Australia, right? So,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? You're delusional, right? But no, really, what did it sound like? And she gave me the sound that she sounded like. And how big do you think it was? And she told me how big it was and where she thought it was in the backyard. And we had a great conversation about this bear in the backyard.
Yeah. And that's what I want to get to, coming back to that listening component, because you said communication is a big mainstay of what you talk about in looking at your material. It's from that perspective, and you mentioned a lot of times, and we've all done this. I'm saying we all do. I know I've done it, used to do it, was someone would be talking, I'm immediately thinking about what I'm going to say next, and I'm not invested in what they're saying. From that side of things, is that, from the male side, is it this, we need to be encouraging this listening, going, hey, it's okay to listen. You can step back and listen. And you can say your point as well. Listen first. I do that in a negotiation program that I have. It's source of power. Listen. Do we need to be encouraging males to have that, from that communication side, to actually actively listen, and it's okay to listen?
Yeah. It's more than okay. I'd say it's mandatory, like whether it's commercially or in relationships. And here's the thing. I mean, my core focus is all about collaboration, and I believe there is magic in collaborating, and you can think about a negotiation as a collaboration. You can think about a romantic relationship as a collaboration. You can think about
say the word. Go on. It's on your website.
Collabradabra.
Exactly.
I love that word. I love that word.
I love it. I was looking at your website and I go, that's so cool.
Yeah. It's funny because I was talking to a mate of mine a couple of days ago, and we swim in the morning. Obviously in Manly, we swim most mornings. And he said,
"You're going to cock the flack for that the rest of your life from me."
It's Collabradabra. He said, "I love that title, Collabradabra," and he was like, he's laughing. He thought it was so funny. There is magic that happens, but the magic happens when you get an outcome with someone better than you could by yourself. So I could walk up to you and tell you what to do, right? So here's what we've got to do. We're going to move from A to B, and here's how we're going to do it. And you're the servant, I'm the master. Which in some situations can be useful if I'm teaching you something that you know nothing about. Maybe I'm transferring information to you, and you're doing what I'm suggesting or teaching or instructing you to do. But in most situations, the outcome is going to be a combination of what you know and I know, like your experience and my experience, or how you feel and how I feel. And we're negotiating, if you like, we can use that word. We're negotiating the relationship. We're negotiating an outcome that leaves us both better off, that we couldn't do alone. Now, I'm better off and you're better off. And there's lots of good work that began with Anatole around Prisoner's Dilemma, which says, if you're in a relationship that's longer term, and he defined it as the chances of you talking again are around 2 in 3, or 2/3 of the time. Longer term relationships, which most of us are in or are pursuing, you're both better off when you collaborate. You're both better off. So be selfishly collaborative.
Yeah. From that, I mean, because that's part of that communication. And if we take that a step further, because you mentioned about your first relationship is with yourself. And we talk about men not having feelings, which, that's utter bullshit to start with, because you're a person and you have emotions. So from that perspective, is it a case where, and because what I've learned is men actually can be really, really highly sensitive, really, and is it a case where, if you take something where you have no concept of what that is and you start to feel that, all of a sudden you're going to go, holy crap, what is that? And may want to push that down because it's like, that's just just so far out of what I'm aware of. Is that something
Yeah,
that you've seen as well, where men are, they kind of recognize that there's something going there, but they have no idea what it is, so they push it back down because it's just too outside of their comfort zone to address.
exactly. In fact, I was coaching someone yesterday morning around that. We've had 3 or 4 coaching sessions together. It started off as a business coaching relationship. It's got a lot more personal fairly quickly. And he had that experience. A he's a 40-year-old guy. He's married with 2 kids. He's not sure whether he loves his wife.
Mm,
He's working so hard. He's got little or no relationship with both of his young kids.
mm,
And he's also reached a level of wealth where he doesn't need to work as hard as he does anymore. And I could sense that emotion welling up in him. And I asked him, I would use the name Jack. I said, Jack, how are you feeling? He said, I really don't know how I feel. And I said, how do you feel about feelings? He said, feelings aren't something I usually navigate around.
mm.
And I said, why? And he said, because I'm scared that if I start feeling, I'll lose control. And having control of my life
Yeah.
is super important, right? He
Wow.
liked to be in control of his kids,
Wow.
of his wife, of his job. He was also like a very hard exerciser. He rode triathlons and this sort of stuff. So everything was about control. And I said, if you were to feel like, can we have a conversation around feeling something? And
Mm.
he said, I'm not sure I can do that because I don't think I could come back. I'd feel like, I said, how would it feel? And he said, it would
Ooh.
feel like I was falling into a hole I couldn't get back out of again.
And that's the point I'm getting to. You said he's without experiencing it, he's going, okay, I feel like I wouldn't come back. I think it would all be over. But that's not reality.
No, it's not reality, but if you haven't,
It's what you
I said,
what they're
when was the
believing.
last time you felt something? And he said, I haven't felt anything since I was about 14. I thought,
Mhm.
shit, that's what, 25 years of not feeling anything? That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time to not feel anything.
But is that really possible as well? Or is that just his perception? He's just shut out that he was feeling these things, but he's actually not recognizing it.
Well, he ignores feeling.
Yeah, that's what
When
I'm getting to. He's ignoring it. He's
when
got
he
it there and
starts
he's pushing
feeling
it
something,
away.
he just pushes it away.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so part of what we are having conversations about is reconnecting him with him,
Mm,
like just getting him reconnected with himself, because otherwise the rest is just not going to work. The rest of his professional and personal life is not going to work. So it's very true, and it's relatively common.
mm.
I'm sure you've experienced it too, where it's like feeling is a female thing, not a male thing, and get a feeling, push it down. Uh, I don't feel. I'm like a conqueror. I'm the master of the universe. I don't feel stuff.
Yeah. Well,
You
so
know.
that's the fascinating. We were talking. I love that you went Masters of the Universe. We'll talk about that in a minute. But but that because from my I said I was posted to the SAS. All those guys there were these were tough guys. They're not AFL rugby, your rugby tough. These were real tough guys. All of
Yeah,
them
yeah,
could talk about their feelings. You could not do that job and sustain it if you couldn't talk about what you went through and how
yeah,
that affected you, and also to be able to ask for help. And now I've had an awakening in the sense of we did a psychological test before you got there. So I think everyone that went there actually had that predisposition where they could talk about this kind of thing. But I always found it unusual when they talk about, the tough guy doesn't talk about feelings, because my experience was the tough guys did talk about it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the people that I know that have been in the elite armed forces,
mm,
um, they talk about fear and feeling fear,
mm,
and they genuinely feel fear. And the way one of my friends explains it is, he says, real courage is being terrified,
mm.
like feeling fear in your entire body, but still going forward,
Yeah. I
like
feel fear
feeling the
every
fear.
day in what I'm doing. There's stuff where yesterday I had a thing to do and I was like, how am I going to get this done? And then all of a sudden I went, okay, let it go. and then I had a shower, and all of a sudden an idea popped into my head, and away I went. And it's not, you don't have the feeling. It's you actually embrace the feeling, and all of a sudden it serves you.
It does. It also makes you more vulnerable. And one of the things I'm constantly interested in is vulnerability. Because like in this swimming group that I'm in, it's called, and don't laugh when I say the name of the group, it's called the Bold and Beautiful. It was
So
named,
I'd fit in the bold category if I could join.
not the beautiful category. It started by a woman about when there was a group of women that liked watching the Bold and Beautiful soap opera. They used to swim together between Manly Beach and Shelley Beach, and that grew into a much bigger group of people, which is now about 8,000 people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's insane.
One of the curious things I find in the group is that when I'm connecting with somebody, if I'm vulnerable, if I talk about something I'm afraid of or a mistake that I've made, I build better relationships than if I act bulletproof, which I can go either way. As they said in the Blues Brothers, when they asked Bob at Bob's Country Bunker, "What sort of music do you have, Bob?" And he says, "Oh, we have both types. We have country and western."
I make that reference all the time, and I used to go to country.
I like country. I can be vulnerable or not vulnerable, but I find when I'm vulnerable, I build better relationships, and people are vulnerable back to me again, and I have a much deeper level of conversation. I was talking this morning with a friend of mine about a fellow friend, a friend we've got in common, who is going through a very challenging challenge with cancer. It's his second round of chemo. He's not doing well. And we were talking about how we could care about him. And this particular guy that has the cancer and has gone through the 2 rounds of chemo, he's not very good at opening up. He's really bad at talking about how he feels. And I believe part of the reason he is ill, not the only reason, but part of the reason is that he bottles so much stuff up.
But is it a case where you look at it, because my son, he's 14, he's recently got his black belt in karate, and the sensei talks about, in the whole training that's gone through, is about having this confidence, you're a protector, or there's all that kind of thing, and he has 5 Ds for defense and or dealing with conflict, I should say, and that's not just physical conflict, it's all, just go, and the first one is distance. And so my son has had that training for enough to get a black belt. It's a long time, I can't remember when he started. And is it a case when you're talking about vulnerability, that what it is you're in a position of strength because you can share that without being in a position of vulnerability, if that makes sense? You've got an inner strength where you can go, okay, it doesn't matter what's going to come my way because I'm going to be able to withstand that, even if I get something negative back. Don't like using the word negative, but it's
if I'm going to get some feedback back, and if I'm in, I guess it depends on which bucket you're in. If you're in the ongoing relationship bucket, whether that's with friends, like with fellow friends, or with a romantic partner, you'll say, okay, I'm all in. I'm all in, and I'm very keen. I mean, a great question to ask a partner or even ask a friend is to ask them. Here's a great question that you can ask your partner or someone that you're interested in having a pretty serious romantic relationship with. Not so much a first date question, but a little way down the track. Say, how could we make this relationship more ideal for you?
Good question.
Or think of a couple of markers of relationship. It could be lovemaking, it could be holidaying, it could be dinners, it could be parenting, it could be a whole range of things. You think, ask themselves, let's think about a holiday. Like, how can we make something that's really ideal for you? Like, what would really work? And the same as with a friendship, you could say, "Look, I really love our friendship. I'd like to see if we can make this a deeper friendship and like spend more time together. What would work for you?" And what you'll do is you'll do like a sorting mechanism of working out who in your life is interested in the quality and depth of relationship where the real benefits come from. And if you look at really good positive psychology research, the number one marker for self-reported happiness is quality of relationship.
Yeah.
It's above money, it's above health, it's above everything else, right? It's above which suburb you live in, how big your house is, what
Well,
schools your kids go to,
I put that in,
quality
and for the
relationships.
listeners, they've heard this story before, but I mean, I've flown to Nice with my family. We've jumped in a private helicopter, which has taken us to Monaco. That's fun, no doubt about it. That's fun. Fulfilling, yeah. If that was just my life, it wouldn't. It would be getting old very, very quickly.
Yeah, yeah, and it's bizarre. I've got a photo on my phone that I love seeing. It's a photo of myself, which is a little bit, what do you call it? A little bit egotistical, but it's me standing alone on the Great Wall of China. Right?
I love that.
I'm
That's
standing there
awesome.
alone on the Great
But
Wall of
you
China.
and that's where I want to explore that, because from that perspective, I mean, one of my great teachers, never met him personally, and he's dead now, was Wayne Dyer. But he talked about you
Oh,
should have a quiet love affair with yourself.
I love Wayne Dyer. I love Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, well, that
You
was
know,
the life changing. I used to read lots and lots and lots of books, never integrated anything, and
the
then
very
Wayne
first
Dyer's,
self-help book I read, I was about 15 or 16.
yeah,
It was called Your Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer. I still
yeah,
remember it
it's his
very,
first
very well.
book.
I love Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, that was his,
Yeah,
and it sold so
I
many
love
because
Wayne
people
Dyer.
used to think it was your erogenous zones.
You're watching this. No, Wayne never got into like that
But
end of the
I
stick.
mean, he's
Um,
that. But what he talked about, and what you're saying there, and this is for guys as well, because sometimes we think, oh, we shouldn't praise ourselves. But and there's a difference between walking around telling everyone, hey, I'm fantastic, to you actually having that quiet love affair and going, hey, I did a good job here. I mean, where does that fit in when we talk about gratitude? How important is that for guys? I mean, I know it's applicable for girls, but we're dealing with what is manly. How important is that gratitude and recognizing your good qualities?
yeah, well, I think it gets to telling the truth,
Ah,
and I remember
I
it gets
love
to telling the
that.
truth. It gets to telling the truth. I mean, I think there's a line in the Bible that says, "Then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And
Mm,
I believe in the freedom of the truth. I mean, I remember I saw an interview of I watched a bit of that Formula One show on Netflix.
mm.
They're chasing the
Driven
Formula
to
One
win or
team
something
across
else.
the
Yeah,
world.
yeah. I can't
Yeah,
remember what it's
yeah.
called.
And they interviewed. I mean, I'm not really into Formula One, but I like watching. I watched a few of those shows because a mate of mine likes them.
Yeah,
And in one of them, they interviewed the head of the Mercedes team, and he's got this huge team, $1 billion business, traveling around the world. He's got cars, he's got mechanics, he's got publicists, he's got marketers.
yeah,
He's this German guy, super successful. And the interviewer just asked him and said, I think his name was Wolf. He
yeah.
said, so how do you make decisions about, running a team like this huge Mercedes team? He said, I've just got a very simple question I ask people when they come and see me. He said, what's that? And he said, I just ask them, how will it make the car go faster? And if you can tell me how it's going to make my car go faster, I'm gonna listen. If not, well, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm the head of my own franchise, I'm head of the Peter Anthony franchise, and I think, how do I make my car go faster?
Mm,
Because when my car goes faster, I'm happier in myself and
mm.
useful to others. As the Dalai Lama said, he said, the secret of life is being happy and useful, happy in yourself and useful to others. Okay, I'm being honest and true to myself, and I'm a
Mm.
full manifestation of who I am. Yeah, I am, and I am good at this. I mean, I'm crap at some things and good at others. I happen to be a good ocean swimmer because I grew up by the ocean. I like being in the water.
Mm.
I'm not saying that to be arrogant, but hey, I'm a good ocean. I'm a competitive ocean swimmer. That's okay. If I'm Lewis Hamilton, I'm the fastest car driver in the world. That's okay. He is. By not
Verstappen might have an
saying that,
argument
he's not
against that.
telling the truth. He's not telling the truth. If
Yeah,
Lewis Hamilton said, I'm not really the fastest, I was lucky to get, 7 podium finishes. Not lucky, mate. You are the fastest. And that's okay.
yeah.
That's okay. Roger Federer, yeah. I'm number one tennis player in the world. I was number one for the most consecutive weeks of anybody else, and that's okay.
That's
It's
a
not being
confidence in
arrogant, it's just
yourself,
telling
isn't
the
it?
truth.
Just being truthful. That confidence in yourself. I had a great mentor. He was he's a former managing director and chairman of BP. And he, he had this thing of, when I asked him, I sent him a text message, he wouldn't respond for a few days, which is, teaching me to fish as opposed to fishing for me. I get it.
Yeah,
and then one day I had something that was urgent. And I sent him a message and I asked him, I'm going into this thing. Can I, get your advice? Can I have a meeting, a phone call, whatever, just to talk about that? And he responded immediately, which was unusual. But what he wrote was, he said, Damien, I think you should back yourself that you'll make the right decision in the moment. And that was, for me, the most, I've had a lot of good ones, but that, to me, that was the most powerful advice. And is that what we should be encouraging men to say, hey, just be, like you said, identify who you are, have a great relationship with you, and then back yourself?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I mentioned those psychometrics earlier, Damien. And one of the markers in the psychometrics is a marker between being spontaneous and being structured, right? And it's it's a polarity, like how much like thought, structure, process do you put around a problem, and how many spontaneous decisions do you make, right?
Yeah.
Now it's really a perverse case of window dressing, because what that's really asking is, how much do you trust your gut feel, and how much do you have to study something for a week before you can make a decision?
Yeah.
Right? Now, there's some great work done on this. One of my favorites was Malcolm Gladwell in his book Blink, and the whole book full of people making spontaneous decisions, trusting their gut feel, which is better than a well thought out response. Now, the guys I was working with here, they've got great jobs. That they're running oil rigs in the middle of the North Sea, right? I'm coaching them. I get them on the night shift, which is between midnight and 6 a.m. for them, which is morning time for me in Australia. Now, of course, these guys can't be spontaneous about getting oil out of the ground and oil and gas out of the ground and back to shore in the UK. They're fighting like 30, 40 knot breezes and 20 and 30 metre swells on a rig in the middle of the North Sea.
Yeah.
I can't think of a more challenging environment to be running. Like, I run this rig, right? So look, but when there's a problem, right, like they follow process. When they hit a problem, one of the best ways to respond when you get a problem is your spontaneity, because as Gladwell reminds us about what Jung said about the conscious and subconscious mind. You know what he said, Damien? He said, your conscious mind is like a cork that bobs on the ocean of the subconscious, right? So knock yourself out thinking inside the cork, right? Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to hang out in the ocean, because the ocean is where most of, like, everything you've experienced and heard and known is stored in your subconscious. If you're allowed to come through, you're more likely to make a better, more effective decision. So trust your gut. Yeah, you get a gut feel, and to get gut feels. I mean, when I first saw you and met you, I thought, I like this guy. That's gut feel. I'm not doing research on you. Right? I'm not asking ChatGPT, hey, Damien, should I like Damien or not? Like,
I didn't exist in 2021, so you can't find me.
Respond whether I should like Damien.
But isn't it like, because when we talk about, there's a lot of discussion, we talk about emotions and men feeling emotions, and there's the discussion of, I've had a number of discussions about sensitive males and highly sensitive males, but that gut feel, and in the discussion that I recently had with a gentleman called William Allen, who's wrote a number of books on this highly sensitive men, and we were talking about that, and I said, well, is it really awareness? Because that combination of what you're talking about, one of my hats is I run a private equity fund. And I don't spend a lot of time in, because to me, making money is simple. But sometimes I've got to choose between two different stocks, and the research shows that they're identical. But that gut feel, I'll choose that one more often than not, that I'm right, that I picked the better performing one. Because as you said, outside of that cork, there's this whole ocean. And is that where we need to be encouraging guys? Hey, this is your power. If you get in touch with that sensitivity, that awareness, you're going to have so much more opportunity.
Yeah. Just think in terms of your subconscious, which is another reason why having like a meditative or reflective practice can be really useful, which guys also aren't very good at. Like having and women are much better at. They're much better at having a practice like a yoga practice or a Tai Chi practice, or something where they really relax.
Yeah.
If you get super relaxed when you're a guy, and you don't try and solve a problem. You just get very relaxed. And there's a ton of great apps that can help you do this. Ones like Calm, which I really like. Whatever practice you might like. When you get super relaxed, it's almost like setting a reset button, and it's allowing that subconscious to deal with what's going on around you. And then when you come out of that relaxation, you make better decisions. There was a great study done just recently in Canada, where they took a bunch, I think it was like 100 CEOs. They took them into a retreat in nature, away from civilization. And they found that it's called off the grid, taking these guys off the grid. And they found after 3 days off the grid, they made better decisions than before they were off the grid.
Well, I joke about this a lot, and I teach this a lot too, because we've got these, if you can kind of see it, the phone thing. There's this little button here, and if you flick that button, it goes to silent and you don't get disturbed. My phone has lived on silent for, I don't know, 8 years now. I literally, and same with going off the grid. But we talk about, you mentioned about guys not wanting to meditate, that kind of thing. But I try and encourage a little bit. I do it differently. Down here, we mentioned I'm in a snobby area like you in Manly, down here on the peninsula, and I've got this big backyard. And I got rid of the gardener, and I bought myself a self-propelled lawnmower, not sit on, but I walk behind it. And I go and I do what I call gumping. I'm Forrest Gump. I go up and down the lawn, nothing on, and I'm just alone with my thoughts. Sometimes I put headphones in because in case someone walks past, I don't want to be disturbed. But is that a similar sort of thing? For me, that works. And obviously, everyone finds their own thing. But is that finding that quiet space?
Yeah. Finding some space. Yeah, finding some space. And guys are really bad at this. And when I recommend it to people, which I do quite regularly, I'd say less than half take it up, even though it's a real because they don't really understand the mechanism through which it works. And the mechanism is what happens when you do find that space is you remember that you're an observer of your life. You are not your life. You're not what's happening around you. Like, just say, for example, if something sad happens to me, I'm not sad. Something sad has happened. You arrive at this observer's perspective. So you're observing your life. It's almost as if there's this other idea called narrative transportation. Like, if you go to a great movie, and the last great movie I saw at the cinema was the Maverick movie, the second, which I loved. Right.
Yeah.
You get lost in the movie. You get narrative transportation. Like when it's thrilling, you feel thrilled. When it's sad, you feel sad. You get transported into the narrative.
I'm a crier in movies, so
yeah.
I was watching Cars 3 and I started bawling my eyes out. I'm serious.
Or Toy Story. I found that really sad too. A sad movie. I tear up in movies too, and I like that. Yeah. You think, okay, it gives you that observer's perspective. It's like, okay, I do have a choice. Like we talked about earlier, like there's that gap between what's happening to you in response. And you think, when I'm my observer, when I'm observing my life, and I'm observing this space between me and what's happening around me, I can feel more in control. I can feel more strength. I can make decisions because it's being more informed by my subconscious. I'm not deliberately doing that. The subconscious will rise all by itself. I mean, you can think of it like the ocean. The tide comes in whether you like it or not. It will come in. The ocean's going to be there. You can think about your subconscious as the ocean. Will just rise up in you when you allow it. And I reckon you try this. Try it for a month and watch your life improve. You'll feel better. You'll look better. Have better relationships. You'll be healthier. A whole range of great things will happen just by sitting and creating some space in your life, your subconscious, to sort some stuff out.
On that point that you mentioned about people, you say half the people you tell don't try it. Do you think from that perspective, is that an ego thing? Because I look at it, I mean, I've dealt with a bit of finances in the past, and they talked about how women make better traders because they're more willing to accept they made a mistake and correct it. whereas men tend to not do that. Do you think that's part of ego, or that we're taught that a mistake is wrong? Where do men go wrong in that perspective of not wanting to try something, like you said?
I think that's right. I think it's partly not wanting to make a mistake. It's also this. It's something that drives me nuts, Damien, and
You think it's
that's this back
participation
to back.
trophies?
I know that drives me nuts too. I actually got sacked.
I can see it in your eyes.
From my Nippers Club. I said Knickers Club, not Knickers Club.
I want to join that club. Can I join that club?
I joined that club too. No, what not the Knickers Club? It was the Nippers Club, because I voted against participation medals for Nippers.
Yeah,
which are like, I was against it because I wanted like first, second, third, right, and then daylight. That's okay.
That's why I like NASCAR. I'm a big NASCAR fan, because there's only first. You don't even get second and third. It's the winner's circle.
The winner, yeah, it's the winners. But the back-to-back thing that drives me nuts, Damien, is this: like I'm dealing with these senior execs, right? And the more senior they are, the more likely they are to begin the conversation with me by saying, "I've got to fit this in. I'm back to back. I spend the whole day back-to-back meetings." I say, that's really sad. Oh, it's like, I'm so important, I'm back-to-back. Whereas the really, really good CEOs I've met aren't back-to-back.
That's because they know how to delegate to start with.
They know how to delegate. They've got some good people around them that they delegate stuff to, and they don't want to be in back-to-back meetings, right?
But is it that sense of importance where they're really missing that, going, "Hey, I'm important. I don't have time to do this, so I can't learn from that." Which is, I mean, that was me at 18. You couldn't tell me anything. I knew everything. But
It's like, I think that's part of this meditation thing, because they regard that they can't do nothing. Like I can't do nothing. I've always got to be. I've got to be. What did Wayne Dyer say? You've got to be a human. He said people are human doings, not human beings. They're doing things, being very active.
Striving. He talked about striving.
Yeah, striving, and it's all that. I haven't got it. I've usually got one here behind me, but it's like having that snow cone. You know those, when I travel different parts of the world, I always buy a snow cone where I visit. Like those snow cones, those things you shake up and all the snow cones.
Oh yeah, snow globe.
A snow globe. A snow globe, a snow globe. Because when I was a kid, my mum was really into teaspoons. Wherever we travelled, she bought teaspoons.
I know the type of women. I've met them. They got teaspoons everywhere.
Teaspoons everywhere, and plates. She used to love.
And the plates.
The plate.
This house was bought by the lady who owned the house. There was found in the workshop all these plate hangers that hadn't been used.
Well, my mum had teaspoons and plates from different parts of the world, and she had a room where these plates and teaspoons where we couldn't go in. Had like a room in our house. It was like the good room that no one went in. With the good
plastic bags and everything.
And the good. That's for when visitors come, which was hardly ever. That deserved to be in this room. And when you were in the room, you felt weird because it was all so new and it felt strange.
You had your own White House. It was the plate room.
It's like it's worse than the White House, because no one goes, probably to use it like once a quarter or something. When my mum allowed somebody to be in the room, it's bizarre. That was her, and had like the glass with the doilies underneath it and the vases. Anyway, that's a whole different story. My mum, the snow cones or the snow globes. That's what your life's like. It's like it's so busy. You're so back to back. Everything's so shook up. You can't see things clearly. You can't see things clearly.
Yeah.
And when you do settle, you allow some time to have a meditative type practice. Quite often, when I'm coaching guys, when I'm face to face with them, I'll do it with them. Like we'll have a 90-minute coaching session, and I will insist on 15 minutes of that being a sit with them, and I'll guide them through like a very simple meditative practice, because I know it's going to work. It will work better than anything else I talk about with them.
It is. I mean, it works. I know it works from my perspective, because I do that. You can actually get to a state, because what you're doing is, you mentioned before about that cork on the ocean, which is, I love that analogy, because they used to talk about the iceberg where it was 10%, but I think you're right. That cork, you're that tiny little cork in the world of the ocean. That's your unconscious. And if you can quiet your mind, all of a sudden that can come through. All that knowledge, all that energy can come through, and then you have this amazing inspirations. And you can do that you don't have to spend, if you train yourself, for the people listening, you can actually do that where you can switch it on in an instant. That's what I do.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
you can do it through a mindfulness practice.
Yep.
Like because you can use one of the things I encourage my guys to do is when I get them super relaxed, when I'm meditating with them and taking, although I don't call it meditation, I call it relaxation
meditation
response.
kind of doesn't work when you do it with guys.
No, meditation does not with these guys. It doesn't
That's
work.
why I call it gumping. Go gumping.
Fortunately enough, there's a guy at Harvard University Medical School called Herb Benson who created this relaxation response.
Yeah.
So I talk about relaxation response. I talk about Harvard. I talk about Benson, and they're more comfortable with that. They're not like they're called meditation. I know the language to use with these. I know them really well. These guys. I know how to penetrate their bulletproof armor. Get in there. So one of the things I get them to do is just like when they're super relaxed, I just get them just to touch their thumb and forefinger together, like just touch them together, and that will elicit the response again when they need it, when they're super stressed or super anxious, which of course they are because they're working like 13, 14-hour days. They're very unhealthy, very unfit, super stressed all the time. And they like that. That's like their badge. You know, I'm back to back.
Yeah.
I think that's so sad. When I hear
it always fascinated me because how often have you heard the quote, work smarter, not harder? Yet so many people don't do it. Wearing the badge, as you said, I'm working hard. It's like,
I'm the stupid one. I'm the hardworking one. And it's also like
Richard Branson's out there on jet skis and stuff.
Yeah. Try and work a lot. Try and work a lot, and just think about the big rocks in the bucket. What are the big rocks? And trust that you've got.
Put the rocks in the bucket first, not the sand.
That's a Covey piece from 7 Habits. So get the big rocks in the bucket. Don't worry about the sand. Get the big rocks in, and it's also about trust. Though, when we began the conversation by talking about, I believe the two most important relationships you have is with yourself and with others. Obviously, with yourself comes first. You've got to trust yourself. You've got to know who you are.
Yeah,
and trust that that's okay. Trust that you are enough. You are more than enough, and you'll be most effective when you're most yourself. And trust that, and then you'll get a higher quality relationships at work and at home, and you will work better because you'll be fully manifesting who you are. Even Maslow said this when he talked about self-actualizing. Like you're a full manifestation of who you are. And some people won't like it, and that's okay. If you're dating, you don't need 100 girlfriends. You just need one.
You just need having a good relationship with one girl, you'll get more sex than trying to go out and dating every night and trying to hook up.
and it will be better because sex usually on first dates is not usually the best. The first time's not usually the best.
No.
It usually gets better after a little while, like maybe after a month or a couple of months, it gets really good between you both.
Yeah.
So you're going to get much better sex, a much better relationship when you're really yourself and when she's really herself and you're really hooking up and getting on well together.
And it doesn't die. My first marriage was 12 years and the sex got better the longer I think it was the sex that kept the relationship together when it should have ended earlier.
Wow.
That's another podcast. We can go there, but that's a
that's true. And like we echoed about a little while ago, when women feel, I mean, obviously there's some women that are different. Some women don't want emotional connection; they just want to go straight to bed with you, and that's great too.
That's fun too.
If you're looking for a relationship, you will find. If you look at what I've looked at, like relationship research with people like John Gottman, and what they suggest is that the number one marker for women in a man is I'm looking for someone who uniquely understands how I feel. And once she feels like
guys, that's a turn on for women. If you understand,
that's a turn on. And you know what? All you got to do, guys, is just listen.
Yeah.
And ask questions. Be super curious about the bear in the backyard. Don't say there can't be a bear in the backyard. Just be really curious about the bear. If you come home and she says the house is flooded, let's be curious about the flood.
Yeah.
You know, if she's
And the
upset
little
about something,
niceties that do things like, she's doing something, walk up, kiss her on the back of the neck and go, "Hey, babe, I love you," and walk away. Watch her chase you across the room.
yeah. Just give her a big hug and a kiss, yeah. Or I remember my wife a couple of years ago decided she wanted to buy pots and paint them,
Mm.
like pots you put plants in. I'm thinking, why don't we just go and buy some pots? You know? But she wanted, like, with her and the kids and who me to contribute to, she wanted to create this pot garden where we all sort of painted. Originally, my first thought was, "You're nuts. It's going to take us ages. They look like shit."
Yeah.
That was my first thought. I thought, "No, honey, I'm really curious. What are you thinking?" And she told me about the pots, and she started, and I suspended my need for, like, trashing the idea
Mm.
of this painted pot
Yeah.
garden.
Think before
And
speaking.
now,
That's a
like,
good trait.
10 years later, we've got a pot garden of pots that our kids have painted, that we've painted, that have got plants in them. It looks a bit bizarre, but it's such a beautiful place for the family to sit and hang out with these pots surrounding us.
And you're still married and having sex. That's the important thing.
and the pots too. It makes it works a treat. It works. Yeah, the sex thing definitely works.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast. And I know we're getting to the end of this, but I did want to come back to one other point that you raised before, and you talked about there was two things. And one of the things you mentioned was being useful to others. When we're talking about guys feeling lost, lonely, and not useful in society, how much of that do you think is them focusing on themselves and woe is me and all that kind of stuff? Whereas, and I relay this, there was a time when I was in Perth, and I was feeling sorry for myself. This was back in the tape deck days in my car, my Datsun 200B. I was sitting there playing this song, "Why Won't Everybody Love Me?" or something along those lines, and I'd hit rewind and play it again. I'm bawling my eyes out. And then shortly after that, I had this awakening and went, maybe I'll just go and help out. There was a charity or something, and they were doing this function where they were feeding homeless people, and they had this big tent thing, and I actually got involved in helping that. And all of a sudden, I felt amazing. How much of that you said being useful to others? How important is that to just go out there and help other people as opposed to worrying about just yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess that's the second step. One is, like, know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, have that great relationship with yourself and understand who you are and accept and celebrate. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I really love. This is a full manifestation of my traits and my particular personality. And then think, okay, how can I be useful in the world? I can be useful commercially, like I can love doing things that make me money, which is my commercial activities, and I can love doing things that don't make me money. Think, okay, what do I love? What am I great at? And you might not know, but just get out there and try things until you find something that you really love. You can make a contribution for. That's.
But even from the making money perspective, if you're doing things that are useful for other people, you got more chance of making money.
You are, but they'll be usually the things that you love doing will normally fall into two categories: things you love doing that make money, which you make a job out of or a career out of, and things you love doing that don't make money, which could be hobbies or interests or something else that you're keen on. I mean, I had a guy recently. I was working in the not-for-profit space for a huge charity that was doing work to correct the gender imbalance in eyesight, because from what I now know, there's a gender imbalance in eyesight in Asia, where when the charities go into Asia that are helping people correct cataract and other eyesight issues they might have, the villages and the families put the boys and men forward before they put the girls forward. So there's a gender imbalance there. So this particular group was looking at gender balance in eyesight. And this one guy was really into drones.
Yeah.
Right? He loved drones.
Cool.
He was like a 40-year-old guy that loved drones.
Yeah.
Right. And it turned out that this particular charity, one of the medications that they were using had to be delivered to remote villages. And he created a program where young boys in these villages, like 12, 14-year-old boys, were given these drones on the condition that they flew this medication to these villages, right?
Yeah.
What a great,
How cool is that?
collaboration.
I love it.
How cool is that? This guy set this program up with these boys, set the particular drones up, right size, right configuration. I don't know much about drones, but he's like a drone expert.
Yeah, well, you're talking to someone who bought an 1,800 square foot factory and built a radio controlled car track in it. So
right. Yeah. Well, I'm not mechanical.
And we flew drones in there as well.
At all. He was in a drone, particular sort of drone that could fly in these like jungle environments by these boys, could handle like water and moisture and wind and all that sort of conditions and get this medication. And that was his program. That was his. It took him a couple of years to crack this program. It wasn't like an overnight thing.
Yeah.
But that was his unique contribution. You think, well, you might not know the answer to the question, how can my unique contribution make a contribution? But the way to find out is by just getting actively in. I call getting in the corridor. Get in the corridor of life and work it out, and it will come to you because there's a problem looking for your solution. You've got the drone solution. There's a problem out there looking for your solution, just like your solution's looking for a problem. And when you're both active, when you're both in that corridor, you'll find each other. But like in a romantic relationship, there's a woman out there looking for a guy just like you.
Yeah.
Just like you're looking for a woman just like that.
Yeah.
But when you get in the corridor, when you get active and you're authentic and you're genuine and you accept who you are and you're a full manifestation of who you are, whether that's romantically or commercially, you get in that corridor and then they're coming towards you as much as you're coming towards them. It just clicks. So that's how to do the relationship bit. Understand who you are, accept who you are, trust who you are, and then find how you can make that unique contribution either commercially or personally, and both are really important. I mean, it's like a bird with two wings. It's like
I find it. I mean, and I want to bring that together because from my experience, and maybe this is just me, but I've found even where they correlate the commercial and the genuine giving. I had an experience years and years ago where I was in Perth and walking through the mall. I had no job. I had $20 in my pocket. I had no money in my bank account. I had no change. I just had $20. An Aboriginal man came up and asked me for change, and I honestly didn't have any. And then I went, oh, bugger it. And I just pulled out the $20 note, gave it to him. And he checked it a few times to see if it was real. Well, that's what I think he was doing. And then he lit up and started dancing. He's dancing all over the mall, jumped on a bin, dancing. Went over to what I assume is his partner or wife and showing her dancing. And I just felt amazing watching that. Now, and I'm not sure that this is correlated, well, whether it was fortuitous or whatever. The next morning, I got a call saying we need there's an interview here for you to attend for a job. Now, I went into that. I felt good about myself. I got the job. I wasn't the only one applying for it, but I got the job. Were they connected? I don't know, but I've had so many experiences like that where because I've genuinely helped something that's led to something, and I'm not saying I did it for that reason. I didn't do it for that reason. Quoting my mum again, give because you want to, not because you expect something in return is her. But I found there is a correlation to that. If you have that natural wanting to give, all of a sudden the things that you want are easier to come across. If you're just taking all the time, it doesn't work very well. And that's where I wanted to come back, being useful into others.
It's a collaborative universe, right? It's a collaborative universe. It's a universe where
Collabradabra,
like Collabradabra. It's a collaborative universe.
Yeah.
And what also turns up is that you'll meet people just like you. Like, I mean, I can use swimming as an example. I like swimming at dawn, like I did this morning. When I went down to the beach, it was dark and the sun was just peeping over the horizon. It was absolutely beautiful sunrise. Now, there's nut jobs just like me, enough of them to swim with me each morning, right? Now, I'm thinking when I'm a full manifestation of who I am, the nut job dawn swimmer in the ocean, I'll meet people just like me that want to walk on that part of my life with me, whether that's commercially, whether that's personally. Similarly, in my working environment, when I'm out talking commercially, but I'm talking at conferences or talking to clients, I'm very, very direct and authentic about what I do and how I do it and why I do it. And there's enough clients that like that idea that engage with me. There's a lot to go, and that's okay. I don't need everyone to love me. I don't need everyone in the world to swim with me. I don't need everyone to be a client of mine. I don't need everyone to be in a relationship with me. And I mean, I'm looking for that's why I don't like this whole idea of funnels. I like pipes. I don't like saying I'm going to talk to 100 people and then one will become a customer. Well, why would I piss off 99 people to find one?
Yeah.
Why would I just
Work
why
smart.
would I just
Just go
find
to
the
that
one to
one.
begin with?
Yeah.
Pardon?
Just go to that one.
Find,
Exactly.
just find the one and be really polarizing, be really genuine, be really polarizing, and say this is what I believe, and this is why I believe this is how it works, and they'll find you because that's who they want to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like being bland or being nothing or being not turning up at all. Think, well, who are you, and how do I connect with you?
I love that
It's
for the guys listening. It's like find out who you are, which is, choose who you are. That's not too hard. And go out there and as you said, be useful to others. It just made me and
yeah. Be happy and useful, and that's not my line. That's the line of the Dalai Lama.
yeah.
The secret of life is being happy and useful, happy in yourself, like know who you are and be happy in your own bones and be useful to others. And those two things travel together. And it's definitely, if there is an enlightenment idea, and obviously the Buddha, the Dalai Lama was after enlightenment and teaching enlightenment, that's where it would come from. And
isn't it before
he
enlightenment chop wood, after enlightenment chop wood?
chop some wood. Well, that's another Covey phrase too. The sharpen the saw. That was habit number 7. I think. Of his 7 habits. Sharpen the saw.
The two wood choppers, and one stops all the time, but the one that stops all the time ends up with more wood. And it's like, well, when I stopped, I was sharpening my blade.
He's sharpening the blade, and I'd say sharpen the blade by having a meditative practice.
Yeah,
and that will inform, because at a subconscious level you know who you are. And the bizarre thing too, getting back to Jung, who we talked about earlier, he talked about that hero's journey, as have many others. And I mentioned this in that video too that you talked about a moment ago, in that there's an inner you, an inner hero, an inner man that's beckoning you on a call to adventure. Yeah. There's an inner you that's beckoning you on a call to adventure, not just any adventure, but your adventure. And you get in touch with who he is, and you live your adventure. And I'd suggest to anyone listening that's not happy, or not as happy as they think they should be or deserve to be, I'd say you need to get more connected with who you are and who your hero is and what your life is, and live that journey. And then you can make the contribution. But you've got to do the work on yourself first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not quite sure who you're contributing to or what you're contributing. I know plenty of guys in their 40s who aren't in the career that's their career. Someone else chose it for them, like a mother or a parent, or like someone chose it for them. I did some work recently with I won't say where it was, a big university in Asia. I can't say where it is. It's in Hong Kong. A big university in Hong Kong, and there's a lot of the students there are desperately unhappy, and they're desperately unhappy because they've chosen degrees and careers that their parents chose for them.
Yeah, that doesn't
You think,
work.
well, okay, whose choice was this? Was it my choice, mum's choice, dad's choice, my wife's choice? Whose choice?
And as a parent, I do this to my son all the time. You don't want that. I say, hey, it's your life. You choose that. You're not sitting on a couch later with some shrink blaming me. It's your choice. Go and do it.
It is.
I tell him that literally. It's like, go and do it.
Yeah. And I guess, what is he say? He's 16.
He's 14. Yeah.
Yeah. And about that age,
I asked him, what grades do you want to get? I said,
they can start making
that goal.
Choices. Yeah, and increase the time horizon you're making your choices over. Like think about, okay, when it's hard when you're a 14-year-old kid to think like this, but you think, okay, who do I want to be when I'm 20? Or if I'm 40, who do I want to be when I'm 50? And then think about that guy, that future self, if you like, and think about who is that guy, and how can I have a better relationship with him, and how can he advise me about making decisions now that are useful to him then. If you keep living for the future, that future catches up with you. Yeah. Like if you're 20 and you're thinking about your 30-year-old self, when you're 30, the 20-year-old self has prepared you for that. So you're in a better space. Then the 30-year-old self can prepare you for the 40-year-old self, and the 50 and the 60 and so forth. You're constantly living in the future and making decisions with a longer time frame in mind, not just what feels great right now. It might be beer, chocolate.
Well, that's a friend once said to me, they said the point of power is in the future. Your point of decision is today.
Yes. Yeah. I like the idea, and Jordan Peterson talks about this too in his self-authoring program. Yeah. And a lot of the coaching I do, I get people to write letters from their future self back to their present self.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
I like that.
so that they can make better decisions, and coach them around how to think about that, like how to think about that future person, and think about, okay, well, if you are off track, I can't tell you where the track is. I can empathise with you that you are off track. I can help you get back on track. I don't know where your track is. Only you know where your track is. Only you know what music makes you feel great. Only you know what woman makes you feel loved. Only you know what adventure that you're on that makes you feel good. Only you know that, not me. I can help you find it, but I don't know what it is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But you'll feel great when you're on that track, and the reason you feel shit, if you do feel like shit now, is you're off track. You're off your track, not off Peter's track or Damien's track. You're off your track. Let's get you back on your track. Whether that's flying drones in Asia, whether it's helping Elon get a civilization on Mars,
building an 1,800 square meter car track in a factory.
Car track, whatever it might be for you. Whatever that track is, you're here to make that unique manifestation of who you are, make a unique contribution to your partner, to your kids, to your friends, to your community, to the businesses that you're involved in, and that's where the happiness and delight is. And
is
that's
that the nutshell? Because I was going to ask you to because we've talked for a while now to wind it up. But if you were to put it in a nutshell, a key takeaway, key wisdoms that you might want to wind it up with, how would you do that?
How would I do? I'd say, what if I answer that question? What is manly? I'd say, what is manly? Manly is the quality of your relationship with yourself and how you manifest that relationship with yourself by the contributions you make to others around you.
I love that. That's awesome. Peter, it's been so fabulous chatting with you today. So much. I'd love to have further conversations if you're up for that, because there's so much more knowledge. There's so many more questions I want to ask you. But thank you very much for taking the time.
Absolute pleasure, Damien.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.